Welcome to Pitch It To Me Podcast, a show about the subjective past, present, and potential future of Flesh and Blood design. We are the destination for design theory, so you can become a better player in theory. Today's episode, our hosts build the hero they are most excited for from Part the Mistveil. On Red Pitch, Joel drops his training weights and shows you how to be a real ninja. On Yellow Pitch, Clark reminds you to smell the flowers with his iris Enigma. And on Blue Pitch, Fuzzy cosplays as a rat in the 14th century and spreads diseases with Nuu. You can find us across all socials such as TikTok and Instagram at Pitch It To Me Podcast.
I'm Clark.
I'm Fuzzy.
And I'm Joel.
Hey guys, Part the Mistveil just came out. How was everyone's pre-release weekend?
Dude, I had so much fun. I went to two, but I think the quality really overwhelmed the quantity here.
Yeah. I really know how Fuzzy did because me and him went to the exact same pre-releases. The same 3 pre-releases.
And I played you in 2 of those pre-releases.
Yeah, they were both extremely stressful games.
No, not the homie on homie violence.
And even the first pre-release, we did a draft after where I also played against you.
Yeah, there was a lot of homie on homie violence this weekend. But then again, that's because I think we have so many homies in the scene. It wouldn't be as much of an issue if we just didn't make as many friends.
Yeah, true.
Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about how maybe some specific moments from our pre-release. Fuzzy, why don't you start?
Are we doing like favorite moments from the pre-release or like our thoughts on the set? Because I do have to say I am loving this set.
I think favorite moments. We'll definitely have time to get into like our limited opinions episode and all that. So
I hear you.
We'll get our time.
I was pretty happy to go 4-0 at the Collector Legion pre-release.
God, your deck was so cracked.
Yeah. It didn't even feel like that crazy looking at the pool. Like, it's not like I had a super flashy Majestic like I did in my other 2 pools, but I had enough like red attack reactions to push a lot of damage, and I was able to block attacks and push damage, and that's kind of all you need with that little bit of disruption thrown in. And I played Nuu like all weekend. Like, I was all about her just because I think like I do this every set where I get biased and there's one hero that becomes my comfort pick. I have a really hard time not playing that hero.
So this is your KO.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Got it.
hey, I mean, like, just forcing KO took you to first place at an RTN. Mm-hmm. So, like,
right.
It's not a terrible strategy to just be like, I know how to play this hero. Mm-hmm. I know exactly what I need to look for. I know what the deck needs to succeed. And then you just make it happen.
And more importantly, you kind of learn, like, you stress test the hero so you know, like, what you absolutely need. So even if you're, like, triple or quadruple contested, you can still maybe squeak out a win during drafts.
Mm-hmm. And you know, like, I don't think I have that level of thought put into it. I think they're just ones that I gravitate towards. And this seems to be the hero for me this season. But I definitely also like Zenne. I played Zenne in a draft, and I would be excited to draft Zenne in the future too. I was lucky enough to pull a cold foil Stonewall Gauntlets in one of our drafts. So if any of our listeners are looking to get a copy of Cold Foil Stonewall Gauntlets, I'm looking to get rid of it. And then I also like love all the Majestics in the set, especially the ones in the Mythic Talent specifically. Mm-hmm. And I pulled like a couple different Rainbow Foil Majestics and was like rocking those at pre-release. So I had like a fun weekend overall.
Yeah.
And then I went to see Rocky Horror Picture Show in the middle of pre-release weekend, so I was kind of nonstop moving for like 48 hours.
Sounds exhausting.
Yeah, we had our buddy in Ben from Idaho, so he tagged along on Saturday to a lot of the pre-releases that we went to, and it was a great time. I had a very good weekend. I did something a little bit special. I bought these extra resource tracker counters from Metal Fab Tokens, the little blue with white ones that were made specifically for the Part the Mistveil set to represent Chi, sort of as a resource. And I was passing those out during pre-release. Every single time I met a player where it was like their very first pre-release or they were very new to the scene, I'd hand one out, and they were always really appreciative, and it was wonderful to see them sort of get something, and it was a welcome fab sort of moment. And I encourage other people to have something on hand to do the same. I think it really helps push that we are a welcoming community, even if the game sort of has that steeper learning curve at the beginning than other TCGs.
Yeah, that was so cool to watch you do that.
Yeah. I also kind of want to talk about how I got a positive win rate on all 3 heroes. Each pre-release, I played a different hero. In my very first one, I went 3-0 on Nuu. In my second one, I went 3-1 on Zenne. And in my third one, I went 2-1 on Enigma. So I know it looks like I got worse throughout the weekend. But I think it's because I was moving from probably the easiest hero to play to the hardest hero to play through that weekend experience.
Sure.
But we didn't get to see Joel at all during the weekend. Joel, tell us about some of your favorite moments from the weekend.
Just really quickly, I want to say, I think this is my first ever pre-release in Flesh and Blood that I didn't play one with Joel at all.
Yeah, because I think before we even knew each other, we played at the Dynasty
Uprising.
I keep getting those mixed up. The Uprising pre-release, and haven't missed one since. So yeah, it was kind of weird that we were like ships passing in the night with different pre-releases. But my weekend was fun. I first went to Lake Forest, which is only like 16 people. So it was like pretty tight knit. I didn't really have anything super crazy. I ended up playing Nuu, just because I assumed that she would be the strongest out of the sealed heroes. And she was the only one where I really had like a cohesive deck. I went 2-1 because I got sauced in the mirror. My buddy Trent is a new connoisseur, so he won pretty handily in the mirror. And the second one I went Zen and 3-0'd because I had both Territorial Domain and Chase the Tail. And I used those to pretty great effect. And I had a lot of really good chi, like Transcend card options. Like I pulled, I think, one of each. And some notable moments, I pulled the Marvel homage to Ancestors, the Gain 1 Life and Transcend.
That's so cool.
What a pull!
Yeah, I was pretty happy about that one because I think that's the most like versatile. You're always going to be playing it. And then when I 3-0'd, the prize packs also had the legendary leg piece for the illusionist. Wow. So we're pretty up right now.
Bro, you pulled so good.
Yeah, that pre-release pretty much paid for itself, and my other pre-release that I didn't do shit at.
So as we get into this episode, we're going to be each giving a CC deck list for one of the new heroes because that's what's on everyone's mind right now. What are these heroes going to look like in CC and what can they do? And we're going to be giving you a little bit like avant-garde builds. These aren't necessarily decks that we're going to see at the top of nationals, but things that might be fun to bring to a local armory or to screw around with on Talishar. Joel, do you want to give us our first one?
Yeah, so I chose Zen because I was specking on him being good a long time ago since he was first revealed and showed that he was going to be on the Crouching Tiger line. So I had everything lined up. I even got a Marvel Crouching Tiger ready to, have a minor bling along with the deck. But he didn't seem super powerful. Like when the rest of his cards were spoiled, it just didn't seem like he had the same power structure as the other heroes. This was an experiment for myself because normally with these builds, we kind of do something like really off kilter or something really specific. And so I just wanted to get used to playing with the cards, at least online, and then see how much of that will translate to the a more agreed upon quote unquote lists for the competitive season. So that if I were to eventually select Zen for Nats, then there's less ground for me to cover to get to this level to perform well.
Yeah, like I feel like Zen is the one hero that has had the least faith from the community. Like everyone seems to be like, oh, I guess Zen's not that good. But I feel like even as of like today, as we're recording, like this morning, I felt like I saw on the YouTube algorithm, like we saw people actually believing in Zen, and they're like, oh, here we go. Like I feel like people are just now starting to figure out the day that we've sat down to record.
Yeah, we sat down to record, and like within the past 2 to 3 days, I feel like 4 major YouTube channels have made an entire piece of like hour-long content dedicated to Zen.
Yeah, so I got plenty of homework to be doing. And this list was largely based on some of the lists that came out preliminarily for Zen. Specifically with Shwoom, the shifting winds of the Majestic Beast, or whatever the hell it's called.
Which we will be referring to as Shwoom from now on. So go to our YouTube version. At this point in the podcast, it will be there on screen. We are going to leave it on screen for a while. This is Shwoom. Look at it now, read the text.
He's the official mascot of our podcast.
One of the ways that they've been that some people have been able to use Shwoom to great effect is by naming all of your crouching tigers into either 100 wins to get a really big 100 wins at the end of a chain, or naming them like Descendant Gustwave to keep chaining bonds together. And then another way is like no matter what you name it, you just name the last one, open the center, so that your Fluster Fist basically turns into a budget Salta wound, so that every crouching tiger that hits gets you a lot more value on your Fluster Fist. And when I looked at that, I was like, man, that's really interesting. Because like normally Fluster Fist is just a 0 for 4 that Katsu plays at the end of a chain, or 100 wind is like, just something you play as like mini head jabs. So I wanted to take those two pieces and kind of extrapolate on them a bit within this list. Another reason why I specifically went with this list is because I've never played with the head jab lines. So I wanted to specifically focus on including more of the head jab line, so that Fluster Fist in particular wasn't just to combo off of a like large Shwoom turn, but get more value out of it from your turn to turn if you're able to line up the combo naturally. Notably, like most ninja players have probably already tested it and decided like this whole combo line is bad early on in the career, and this is like my first time playing ninja since I first started the game. So I'm just kind of testing stuff out while I figure out what Zen build I want to be focusing on.
I do think it's interesting because being able to have lots of crouching tigers means that it can hit a lot more. Like if you look at the normal like head jab to Fluster Fist line, it's not very impressive because you're spending a lot of resources to throw these cards. But if you get to just like have 8 crouching tigers swinging for 1, that's really hard to block. It kind of makes that Fluster Fist active way more powerful.
Absolutely.
So yes, it was garbage until you could name 8 1-powered crouching tigers, open the center, and then it becomes way stronger.
Yeah, also, listeners, if you don't know what the full head jab line is, it starts off with head jab, which is a 0 for 3, 2, and 1. And then it goes into open the center, which is a 2-cost combo card that says if it follows head jab, it gets +1 dominate and go again. So at red, it'd be 6 dominate, go again, and at blue, it'd be 4. And then it goes into either Fluster Fist, which gets +1 for every time you've hit this turn, or Pounding Gale, which basically is a 1 for 5. And it gains, when this would hit, it deals double that damage. So if you can't block the 1 for 5, it becomes a 1 for 10. So a really powerful effect, but it's pretty costly. If you're not in Katsu, it's hard to find those other pieces. So that's why I'm looking at Shwoom to kind of fill in the gaps between making open the center a 0 for 1 go again, and then making Pounding Gale 1 for 5 with the same on hit, or a lot of crouching tigers to make Fluster Fist huge, things like that. Just because I again want to play with this line, but need to make it a bit more consistent somehow. So aside from including a ninja line that isn't focused around bonds, maybe isn't played as much, here are some key combos that I actually really like about the list, and these are some things that I'll try to include when my list gets closer to Nat's ready. The first one being Territorial Domain, and Territorial Domain is a 0-cost defense reaction at blue that gets starts out at 2, but it blocks for +3 up to 5 if you have created a crouching tiger in that turn. Initially, that seemed like really bad to me because like you're normally making crouching tigers on your action phase, so that would make the defense reaction useless. But we got Tiger Eye Ambush from the Round the Table. I don't know if it's a set or what, or just a.
I guess
product.
just a product. Yeah.
So for the Round the Table set, included Tiger Eye Ambush, which is a new block card that can be defended with from Banish or from Arsenal. And if you do, it creates a crouching tiger in your banish zone. So when you block with this, you can play Territorial Domain either on that same link or on a subsequent attack for 5. So 1 card 5 block is pretty gnarly. So it makes Tiger Eye Ambush a basically 4-point value and Territorial Domain a 5-point value, which to me just seems really good if Zen wants to be a bit more mid-range while he builds towards those larger combos. And another way that it combos, which is something that I use specifically in my sealed pull is Stride of Reprisal, which is the new ninja leg piece that has Blade Break 1. And when it defends, you create a Crouching Tiger in your hand, which is another way that Territorial Domain can get full value. So like a 1 card for 5 by just using some armor seems like really hard to interact with value that is good against some of your bad matchups like Azalea or Assassin.
Mm-hmm. I'm really happy that you're noting these defensive combo lines because one, I think it's like kind of cool that we're starting to get these defensive combo lines. Like if you can do this, you get this extra power. It definitely broadens the scope for what I think Ninja can look like.
Absolutely.
Looking to have multiple 2-card, 3-card combos appearing throughout the various hands, and you're sort of trying to build your deck to be as flexible as possible based on what you end up drawing and arsenaling.
Right, exactly.
Super, super cool. Being able to arsenal the Tiger Eye ambush so that when that Dominated Crippling Crush goes in, you're just like 3, 5, I'm blocking 8, I don't get the crush effect, I still have a 3-card hand to come back at you with.
Yep.
Plus a Crouching Tiger? That's not nothing.
That's nothing.
Like, that's pretty good. If a Bravo like took some damage to hold a like Dominated Crippling, thinking that they're just gonna run over the ninja, which they always do, that stops them dead in their tracks.
Yep.
It's a really cool little engagement there. I also think it's very nice because with a lot of the power that Zenne seems to have, seems to be concentrated in these very individual turns, right? Like if there's one turn where he deals 30 damage, or like 2 turns maybe in a game where he deals 30 damage, and those are the most reliable in the late game once you've transcended once or twice, and you can like have a chi in your hand naturally. Being able to have good defensive capabilities to get you closer to those turns seems very good.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking about when I was trying to include these cards, because if I'm waiting for the right combo, like sometimes just blocking for 3 isn't enough, especially if Nuu is able to go really tall, or there's like dominated effects like Azalea running around to counter the meta. So that's just kind of what my thought process was.
Oh yeah, Azalea.
I like how this like pair of defense reactions, the Tiger Eye Ambush, which is basically a defense reaction, and Territorial Domain, they remind me of like Wax On and Wax Off. You were talking about these defensive combo cards, Clark. Like, I wonder how viable these paired defenses are going to be, because we've always thought it was really sketchy to run 2 cards that have to be drawn in similar timings in order to get full defensive value out of them.
Yeah.
Let alone like your opponent has to present enough damage for you to play both defense reactions and get value out of them, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really excited to see if this works out for you.
Yeah. I think the issue with Wax On, Wax Off, in terms of like why people didn't quite feel that combo versus like maybe Flick Flack sort of being a combo in and of itself. You can't see it, audience, but I did air quotes there. Or this new combo that we found with Tiger Eye Ambush and Territorial Domain is that Wax On and Wax Off creates a Zen State token, which only really starts to get that like really nice value on the cards if you're blocking a really low to the ground hero, like, I don't know, another ninja.
Sure.
So like it's great in ninja mirrors, but how often is that what you're going to run up against? Versus like dealing with a tall attack that you want to only throw 2 cards at. I feel like that has a much wider application and therefore seems a lot more viable.
Sure.
Yeah, and that's kind of where I think Zenne is really struggling right now, because he wants to be defensive, and we've talked in this podcast before about to be defensive in a meta, you need to know how aggressive the meta is going to be. So it's going to take some time to figure out how much I want even these combos that I have now, but also how much we want to consider Wax On and Wax Off to get those extra Zen State tokens for really wide boards. And I've heard talk of, Phi coming back to counter the meta. So I don't know, maybe it's a consideration later on, but this is what I'm working with so far.
Yeah, I think that's a great point because it illustrates how, like, why do we brew? Why do we test? Why not just wait to let someone solve it and then build that deck list itself? It's like because there are individual lessons that we can take from our own experiences. We can find things that those testers never would, right? Like they are playing in different environments from you. And it's worthwhile to sort of push the limits and find these different ideas. I want to remind everyone of Charles Dunn winning PT Las Vegas, I want to say it was.
No, it was Nationals.
Yeah, that was Nationals on the defensive Briar list. People had been working on that list for at least a year before it had finally really struck meta. And I think that run that Charles Dunn was able to go on wouldn't have been possible without other people working on and refining that list for over a year, finding small little interactions and optimized choices to really make it work.
And it wasn't being played or even like winning anything prior to that. They were working on it in secret, preparing for like the perfect event to take her to.
Yeah, and that ended up being it. It's really special, and it makes it cool whenever you see things like this.
Yeah, and I think the funnest part is hearing your guys' reaction when you see these cards show up on Talishar. You're like, Tiger Eye Ambush?
Yeah.
When the fuck did that come out? I'm like, boy, I'm cooking over here. You don't even know. But I'm really enjoying this because I haven't really spent that much time brewing in a long time. Like, I've been sort of a meta chaser. So being able to take a little bit of a break and explore some things that I might like in this meta that are different than what I usually play, like the, Point Goblin Warrior gameplay. And maybe this is my new baby. I don't know. But I'm really excited to try this deck out. And if anyone out there is playing with Zen and they have some really cool ideas or maybe some other like really niche ninja lines that don't get used, I'd love to work on other iterations of this list, like maybe with leg tap. That was one of my predictions for our pitch and predictions episode, was that Zen wouldn't be bonds, he would be leg tap, and that didn't end up being the case. But I think with Shwoom, it enables him to be a more versatile ninja than even Katsu is in some ways, especially since Katsu is like on this really focused Surging Strike build. But yeah, that's about all I have for Red Pitch. I'd love to hear what you have for Enigma. Clark, what do you got?
Yes, so I built Enigma. Specifically, I am calling this Enigma list Down to Earth Enigma because I'm saying, hey, everybody, I know you're thinking about like, oh, it's going to be crazy. She's going to have this giant board of like 10 plus auras, winning games 42-0. That 10,000 year reunion, such a broken ass card. And I'm just saying, hey, chill out, relax, come back down to earth, smell the flowers. Specifically, this Iris of Reality. So I have built an Enigma all about Iris of Reality. So everyone was looking at Cosmo lists, and I was looking at these cards, and I was finding it very, very boring. I found it very boring to watch players spend their entire turn to make an aura swing for 4, and then get 3 block on their next turn. Like, yes, that is 2 cards and you get 7 value, but God, it was really, really boring to watch. Games dragged on, and it would go down to almost fatigue levels. I mean, it was just slow-ass gameplay, and I did not like it. So I went to Iris, and I have found that this list is a lot more exciting and has a lot more interesting interactions. So the main part of Enigma's ability that we're really emphasizing here is not spending a chi to make a Spectral Shield with a +1/+1 counter. It is that the Spectral Shield attack costs 1 less.
That first line of text.
Yes. So Iris of Reality is, for 3 resources, make any aura you control attack for 4 go again. But if it's a Spectral Shield, it only costs 2 for 4 go again.
Free resource? Tell me more.
Well, not just a free resource, because if this has a +1/+1 counter from her other ability, that's just Surging Strike on a stick, baby. So we get to attack with a Surging Strike every single turn. You know how annoying that is in Katsu? Well, now it's an Illusionist. And yes, we get 1 free resource. So we get to find room for lots of these cool, interesting 1 costs in the list. Now, a lot of these are being run by other lists right now because, like, 1 mana or 1 resource instance is, like, really easy to work in. Things like Miraging Metamorph, Waning Vengeance, Levels of Enlightenment. These cards are all very, very good regardless of sort of what you're doing with Enigma. But I think I do have 1 spicy include in this slot, Spears of Surreality.
Okay, yeah. That's a good thing to do with an extra resource.
Mm-hmm. as a result of Spears of Surreality and Miraging Metamorph, we're running a lot more Phantasm. So this version of the list does run Phantasmal Footsteps, which is a little frustrating because it's like one of the most expensive legendary equipment right now. It's like $140.
But you know what? It is free on talishar.net.
Yes, sir.
But it's really important so that you can keep going with your turn if you plan on doing any follow-ups. Then what you can do after you have swung for 2 for 5 go again, and with your 1 cost, is that any extra blues in your hand just become more 3 for 4s with go again. And it starts to look a lot like the Iris of Reality builds that we see in Prism, or sort of that old sort of Aura Storm idea that we saw back with OG Prism, right? It's just this idea of like, if you let these auras stick to the board in any way, shape, or form, especially these Spectra auras, which take your whole action point to get rid of, I am just going to turn every single blue into my hand into 4 more damage every single turn. Doesn't matter what's printed on the card, it is 4 damage. And if we're ever able to keep our cards because they've decided to block us, we can turn them into really, really high-rated attacks. Things like Battlefront Bastion and Phantasmaclasm. Phantasmaclasm has also been a standout card in my testing.
I like the shout out for Battlefront Bastion because that card is a surprisingly good blocker. I know that like this is something we've been seeing over the course of Limited. Like just the fact that it's able to block the Kakara and the Crouching Tiger makes the Battlefront Bastion so convenient for helping the auras. But I can definitely see it being strong in Classic Constructed too. Just having that blocker for a go wide situation makes it so much easier to protect our auras.
Well, not only that, but it also functions as a 7 power popper, which is pretty important for Prism matchups and the other illusion, or if Enigma ever decides to run other more Phantasm against you, you can pop that pretty reliably with that card.
Yeah. I've also found that it's so interesting because like 3 for 7 that also has 3 defensive value is like a very good card, and we've seen run in a lot of these like slower control-y value decks like Icelander with Findall's Fighting Spirit. But rather than gaining 1 life, we would really prefer the 1 damage prevention. Because the 1 damage prevention, yes, you're right, Fuzzy, it can like protect a Spectral Shield on a breakpoint, but it can also cover a Vambrace trigger.
Can it?
Yes.
Oh yeah, because
it essentially eats it. Yeah. So like if someone throws a dagger or like a Kakara, and then they want to Vambrace on top of that, it can essentially eat that Vambrace trigger. So it both blocked the damage preventing the pop, and then it gave us a resource to eat the Vambrace trigger. And then we just need to deal with the damage that's coming in. Very, very useful. And like a lot of Enigma decks, you need to make sure that you're running enough defensive tools to keep your board up, especially your Spectral Shields. So I mentioned how a lot of the deck is oriented around swinging with your Spectral Shield first because of the reduced cost. So we're going to want to focus on that. Running things like Fate Foreseen, Sink Below, I've already mentioned Battlefront Bastion, Waning Vengeance. That Waning Vengeance is also very nice. If you like pitch a blue to play it, it not only blocks 3, but then it pops and gives you a Spectral Shield to cover another 1. It's pretty cool. And I'm running Oasis Respite main board. It's a little bit different than what other Enigma lists are doing.
I could see it when you have other instant speed auras to pair it with.
Yeah, typically having anything that you have to pitch for on your turn feels really bad unless you're spending like a whole card like for Unmovable, for instance, or maybe like other Arcane Barrier and then using the last resource for an Oasis Respite. But because you have so many instant Illusionist auras, you can just dump basically a whole blue and get more than any one card by itself, especially if you have multiple non-blocking cards. So I actually like that inclusion a lot.
It's also really good with Tunic. Are you running Tunic in this list?
Goddamn, I'm right. Goddamn
yeah.
right, I'm running Tunic.
Then Oasis makes perfect sense.
Yes. I also have a ton loaded up in the sideboard. Mistcloak Gully, Dense Blue Mist, Hold the Line, that all you got. It is so important that we're able to tailor our defensive capabilities to keep our board up against whatever the opponent can be throwing for us. So Mistcloak Gully and Dense Blue Mist are meant to help against the Zins and the Phis of the world by just giving -1 attack to whatever they are doing. It can become very useful. I think Mistcloak Gully is especially useful against some of those, let's say, less than ideal go-wide strategies, like Assassin is doing right now. Most Assassins are trying to beat Enigma by just dagger holding up Vambrace every single turn, and saying, hey, your first attack has -1 power, and that second attack coming in, that gets covered by the Battlefront Bastion.
We love playable
so
fables.
Frustrating. Yeah, very playable fable.
Playable fable.
Playable fable. I do also want to note some of the spicy includes I've included in my deck. Like Tranquil Passing. Tranquil Passing, I'm running at blue, and you've probably never heard of this card before. It is a 1-cost aura with Ward 1 that says when it enters the battlefield, you get to essentially take an aura of cost 1 or less and tuck it under Tranquil Passing. The moment that Tranquil Passing pops, return that aura to the opponent's field.
Wait, so what is this doing?
This is stealing KO's agility.
No. Oh, wait.
Those are auras, baby!
Oh.
I can just steal their auras!
That's actually kind of good. Wait.
It's kind of really good. I can steal Vigor tokens. I can steal Agility tokens. I can steal Might tokens. I can steal Rune Chant tokens. I can steal Runeblood Incantation from Vincent.
Oh, wow. That's actually really strong. I like that.
Do they come back after a Tranquil? I know in like Magic.
Once it pops, it will return to the arena.
Okay.
Yes.
But I'm imagining this like after KO does like a cast bones turn and you play this, so like sure their attack gets buffed, but like that's the only thing they're doing. So it kind of gives you a bit of breathing room, and maybe your other ward auras can soak up the damage. That Tranquil Passing just keeps holding that agility token hostage.
Yep. And then maybe the moment that they like make an agility token, you just give it back to them. Like, yeah, sure, now you can have it back.
That's actually really funny. I like that.
Yeah. It's only a 2-of. I think it's the card that's probably most likely to get cut in the list, but it's a spicy little include.
It's cute.
Yeah.
I like it for this episode for sure.
I also want to call out Cosmic Awakening, because this feels like a spicy include, but then also like everybody's running it, but like
I thought this was down to earth, smell the flowers Enigma.
I gotta do some spice. I gotta do some silly stuff.
And hell, you can even just find your first copy of Cosmic Awakening, and even off of 1 chi, what is it? 9 for 10. That's still, you're still swinging 10, and either they take like 10 free damage, or you're getting a lot of cards for 1 card spent. So in a anti-fatigue or fatigue matchup, however you want to look at it, that's pretty good value.
Yeah. Some drawbacks to the list is that Manifestations of Mirgai isn't as OP in this list. Yes, it still swings for 8, but now it costs 3 chi and another blue to swing for 8 rather than just 3 chi and like a Findall's counter. So I think that's a notable thing to point out. I am still running 3 Manifestations of Mirgai because I think it's cracked, but it's definitely not as broken. I think Levels of Enlightenment is slightly stronger in this version of the list because it's easier for us to pitch a lot of blues.
Oh yeah, give me that good Levels of Enlightenment value.
Yeah.
Fuzzy.
Mama want.
Hey, yo.
So if you think like holding on to 2 blues and Levels of Enlightenment, you can blue swing with your Spectra Aura, blue swing with your Spectral Shield. With the 1 floating, then you come in for 3, draw a card, draw another blue, swing with another aura for 4.
That's so annoying.
Yeah, right? Like,
Oh man.
you can get some really, really nice turns on this.
1-5 go again, draw a card,
Yeah.
kill me.
Yeah, the deck can get pretty cool, I think.
Like it looks like it's really beating people down. I know it might just be like every Enigma deck can really beat people down if they have a strong enough board state, and this deck kind of has the same problem, but it seems really easy to just leak a bunch of damage that they're either respecting it or they're taking a bunch of damage every turn, and it's not going to be that long before they run to 0.
Yeah.
I love how you like are using a different weapon that we've seen illusionists use in the past, and I really think like Iris has a shot at being the best weapon in Enigma. Cosmo has a lot going on for it, but 3 for 4 go again is a very reliable floor. And it's really easy to get auras on the board, be them Spectra or Ward. And if they have a +1 counter, it comes 3 for 5, you know? I think 3 for 5 off of a blue is really strong. And there's a lot of potential here. I love the inclusion of the Phantasm attacks too. Like when I was like poking around with Enigma, that was kind of one of my thoughts is like Phantasm's still really good. Being able to do like 2 for 8, and you have to give me one of your strong attacks if you want this to not suck for you.
All right. I think with all that being said, let's go ahead and ping pong it over to Fuzzy on the other side of the table.
All right, so I've got blue pitch, or as we're going to be calling it today, new pitch.
I thought it was Nuh.
Yeah, nuh pitch. So I think a lot of the buzz around Nuu has been the myriad of options that you can use when building her. Like, I've heard pro players say, I'm used to struggling to find my last, like, 78, 79, 80th card to go in my deck. But with Nuu, it's the exact opposite. There's, like, 100 cards that I want to put in Nuu, and I can't decide which ones. So I've broken it down for y'all. I actually am bringing a few different ideas that I ping-ponged through, and I'm going to go into more detail on my last one, because that's the actual deck list I'll be sharing. But I want to talk about some of the ideas that I went through and decided against diving into. But I think there are smarter people than me out there that can still figure these out. So if you feel inspired, I'd love to hear what you're able to do with them. At first, I tried building a 1-power aggro Nuu build. Like, looking for scrap can banish these blue stealth cards from your graveyard. Or, like, this majestic Justinic just rewards you for playing 1-power attacks because it gives it +5 for 0 cost. I'm like, that's amazing.
Yeah. We see this in a lot of the classic Nuu lists that are coming out nowadays, right? Like, looking for scrap, Justinic, these new powerful blue 1-powered attacks, like, all of that was just a symphony to Assassin players, and they caught on very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, I hadn't really seen looking for scrap in the new lists, but I wasn't looking too hard, I guess. I put in Vipox in the list that I was messing with.
Now that's a spicy meatball.
And if I like the idea of playing this really aggressively, because looking for scrap is just damage. It's just efficient damage. But 0 for 1s are not efficient damage until you give them cards like Justinic. And Clark mentioned you can also throw like Tide Chakra into the mix just to do another 1 for 5 damage on top of things. So I feel like you could play this list pretty aggressively if you have the tempo and push lots of damage and surprise people by swinging for so much. And I think Gore Belching would be a really cute include if you're running lots of 1-power attacks, because then that becomes a 0 for 6. Lots of good 1-card hands, 2-card hands.
Can you imagine a turn of like Spider's Bite, looking for scrap, Gore Belching for 6?
12 damage, easy.
Off of a 3-card hand? Yeah. I mean, we talk about that being some of the best rate in the game with Levia. I mean, just give that to an assassin? Nutty.
Doesn't even seem that hard to do, honestly. And the Spider's Bite trigger gives you even more value. I also was playing around with like a Cheerios list where I was like, okay, a lot of these stealth cards are really cheap. Let's focus on that. We can run like Captain's Call blue in order to turn on our Transcend cards, and that works really nicely with all these 0 costs. So you can have really small hands where if you just throw a stealth card, you can block with all the red of your cards, don't take damage, but threaten their deck or their life total and try to keep them blocking us and keep them guessing. And in a build like that, I'd probably also run Razor's Edge because it's a 0 cost attack reaction. So you can have 2-card hands where you're swinging for 3 or 6. And that can be a little surprising. It's not crazy numbers, but you're also attacking their deck and maybe gaining a little bit of life with these stealth on hits, and you can play like a slow grindy game that way. E-Strike would also probably be really good in this list, because I would imagine it being a little bit more red line.
Yeah.
You'd probably run a lot fewer blues, because you don't need to pitch for anything.
No, what are you pitching for? Daggers? You don't need daggers. Vambrace? You don't need Vambrace.
And then Clark showed me the list that he was kind of tinkering with Nuu, and I would describe it as like a control list in the truest sense of the word. Not fatigue necessarily, but like control, because Intimate Inducement lets you see what part or all of your opponent's next hand and force them to block with the best card in it. And a lot of the time you're going to take their blues, because that card wants you to take blues, because it doesn't have block value. But you could just take their power card. Like, if you're playing against...
Let's say you're playing against Bravo,
or
and you see a crippling crush, and you just go, no.
Right. Or I think like you might even be able to grab like Art of Wars from Ninja or
Blood Rush Bellow off of Brute.
yeah. And if you don't see anything too interesting, you can just take their blues and hurt their resources. And cards like Siren's Call double up on this idea that if I can take their blue from their hand, they don't have it to pitch to, and they're going to have a hard time racing you if they don't have any blues or power cards to play.
Yeah, so many modern aggro lists are built off of the philosophy of 1 blue in hand and play 3 reds.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are taking away that blue in hand, whether it's the next turn or the very same turn, you are shutting down their ability to deal damage. I know if someone took the blue out of my hand as a Viserai player, I would probably scoop. Like, if I was like, oh, I got Mordred Revel turn, it's gonna be so good, take your blue. I can't do anything.
And I love the idea of taking them in advance to have that controlling aspect of the game. And then I know Talon was trying to build Fatigue New. That also kind of sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, it sounds like Talon.
He has a type. What can I say? And there's lots of cards in New that really facilitate that. But what I eventually decided on was Blood Rot / Plague New. I got obsessed with this idea of like Virulent Touch, the one that creates blood rots based on the amount of blocking cards, and the fact that we can force lots of blocks with this hero, some of it with Intimate Inducement, which could be like pulling a blue off the top of their deck and sticking it as a blocker that doesn't actually block at all, still giving them a blood rot pox and generating like 3 points of value as well as ruining their hand, or cards like Siren's Call that do similar things. And I love the idea of just pairing this with things like Command and Conquer where they have to block, and Spreading Plague where you're doubling down on the blood rot poxes based on them blocking your cards. So you're either like forcing them to block by just setting a really good on hit or with these attack reactions and then punishing the blocks with the Spreading Plague.
I really love the Virulent Touch inclusion here because that is one of those cards that like I think everyone thought could be really, really good. Because in the late game, it's like 4, like you cannot block this 4 or else you have to give me a blue, right? It gives you value in either regard. And here it's really special because you're doubling up on the value. So you could be like, man, 1 card in hand, 1 in arsenal. I guess I'll play Virulent Touch. And then someone's like, I can take 4. And you're like, cool. Intimate Inducement. Put a blue down. So now it's 5 and you get a blood rot pop.
Oh,
That's
my
a 2-card
God.
7.
Yeah.
Wait, that's so nasty. Ugh.
Like those are the Now Virulent Touch can only be played from hand. It cannot be played from hand. It has to be played from arsenal, which is a little unfortunate. But we can run like Codex of Blood Rot to make that a little bit easier. I feel like this card gets slept on. It gives them a Blood Rot Pox no matter what, and it gives you a Ponder token no matter what. It is like a free Blood Rot Pox. Like the Codex cards are all so strong at a fundamental level, and it also like might make your opponent have to tug a card in arsenal, which is going to affect them like almost 0. But for us, it means that we can put Virulent Touch in. And I think I also really like how these new Assassin Mystic cards, like Hiss or Intimate Inducement, they target any Assassin attack action card.
Yeah.
And there's like cards like Death Touch, which are just really strong value.
Oh, God.
Really good on hits. And if we can give them Go Again with our Slither tokens, or just add a little bit more power to help them stick, there's just a lot of versatility there. And that's what I like about this list.
Yeah.
I'm also running Bonds of Agony because it's very flashy and I need blues.
And it's absurdly strong.
Yeah, that too.
I love this list, honestly. The ability to like what I love especially about the Slither token that you get from Hiss is that you can also play it on any attack. So you can also just give CNC Go Again.
Right.
Ew. Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is a really special, fun list. This is the kind of list that I want people to be taking to armories, right? Like, is this going to be winning any tournaments? Probably, like, highly certainly not, right?
Yeah, these are, I think all of these lists are things that we could definitely see at Armory if they were like a bit more casual, which is like cool and sad at the same time.
Yeah, I would love to see armories open up to watching these kinds of lists come into play. And I would also love it when like a new player sits down and he's like, I net decked this off the tournament winning, and someone's like, "No, you don't know, man. Fuzzy's here. He's got disease new deck. You didn't build right. How many blues you got? 18? That's not enough blues. He's gonna take all the blues out of your deck. You're never gonna be able to play anything."
And then every once in a while, Nuu always has the backup plan of like, well, I managed to banish enough of your blues that I'm going to have a crazy powerful turn.
Now I'm playing both decks.
Yeah.
If I had one other thing to say about this hero before we move on, it's that I kept pulling Gorgon's Gaze, like in pre-releases. I think
You poor thing, only pulling magenta.
and I kept trying to play it and falling on my ass. Like this card feels like such a trap because nobody ever falls for it. And I always get like blown out. I keep my 5-card hand by taking a bunch of damage, and then I lose because of Gorgon's Gaze. And I feel like I was doing the same thing when I was testing and constructed on Talishar, because people don't block my attacks because my attacks are like clear and obvious bait.
Mm-hmm.
So Gorgon's Gaze seemed really exciting going into the season, but maybe I'm just too stupid to use it. It makes me feel stupid when I hold it.
Well, I think you might have to start treating it sort of like a pummel, which I know sounds very odd, but like doing something that costs 2 into this off of a Findall's trigger might be more of where it sort of lands in lists.
Yeah.
And it only gets good if you're able to make something enough of a threat. So I'm looking at like Leave No Witnesses, Death Touch, possibly even like Command and Conquer.
Yeah.
Right? Those are sort of the things I feel like you want to be playing the Gorgon's Gaze on. Or possibly even like if we wanted to start twisting this deck towards the more traditional lists of like just a Nick and like trying to get these blue 1 cost attacks and like these double troubles up to like 10, 12 damage, and then being able to like use that Findalls and that 1 floating to just like remove their ability to block it.
Yeah.
I think that's sort of more what Gorgon's Gaze is intended to be used for. But I think you're right that a lot of people are it just keeps moving down and down in the list because it requires the opponent to do something. And we've talked about proactive versus reactive game plans and how waiting for your opponent to do something isn't the best way to win Flesh and Blood games.
Yeah. So that's about all I got for my section. Do you guys want to move on to the Arsenal Zone?
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Listeners, the Arsenal Zone is where we all talk about a card that we've been thinking about lately. And I think because all 3 of us just had our pre-releases, we might be talking about cards that we played in pre-release.
It's a good
Oh,
card.
yeah. Certainly.
Clark, do you want to go first?
Yeah. I am going to talk about Attune with Cosmic Vibrations.
Ooh. Cue the little metal.
Yeah, the little like very thin sheet of metal. That you just sort of
you know what I was
waddle in
talking
the air.
about.
Or the Theremin?
Yeah, the theremin.
Is that the magnet instrument?
Yeah,
thing?
yeah.
Yeah. Attune with Cosmic Vibrations is not a great card in terms of like a majestic. Like it's not going to make its way.
Little
into most
letdown.
lists.
What does this card do, even?
It's a 0 for 5 blue.
No, Fuzzy. It's a 0 for 2 blue with 2 block that when you attack or block with it, or sorry, I think like attack a hero or block an attack from a hero.
Yeah.
Then you get to reveal the top card of their deck. If it's blue, it gets +3 of whatever the relevant stat is. So if you're attacking, it can become a 0 for 5. If you're blocking, it can become blocking for 5.
Oh, yeah, that is terrible. I agree.
It's not great. You're going to cut it for most of your list. It's fine. I think it's great in limited.
Yeah.
Super, super good in limited. And I want to talk about this one game that I got to have where I won this insane late game against John Zapata. So
Sorry, John.
I know, I'm so sorry, John. I kind of popped off at his face about it when it happened.
Oh
but like,
my God.
It was a really, really cool play.
Not represented the brand, man.
So, we're in a really, really tight game, and I just established enough of a board state on Enigma that I am about to resolve my manifestations of Mirror Guy and win the game. But John just has the perfect pick the pieces turn to like clear me out, put me to 2 life, and now I have to like try to build my board again, but it doesn't matter because I already spent so many cards blocking. So I arsenal the Mirror Guy and I wait for next turn. And John's looking at me. Time's running low, and he goes, "All right, Clark. 3 for 7, Battlefront Bastion Red." And I go, "Fuck! This is such a good card." I'm looking at my hand. I have the chi I need to play Manifestations of Mirror Guy as an 8-powered card. I have the blue that I need to attack with it. I just need to find a way to block 6 damage, and I don't have it. I have a 2 block, and this. The Attune with Cosmic Vibrations, and I go, if he has a blue on top, I win. I say, I block for 4, and I call it, you have a blue on top of your deck. John flips it over, and he goes, yup. I block 7, Manifestations of Mirror Guy, swing for 8, uphold tradition, make it 10, and he's like, yep, Clark, you got it. Man, what an end to that game.
I love that card. I pulled a rainbow foil.
I pulled mine was a rainbow foil as well that I was playing with. God, the rainbow foil is so pretty.
It's a pretty shiny kind.
God, it's so pretty.
Joel, do you want to go next?
Sure. So I'm cheating a little bit because I have 2 cards.
Cheater!
Wow.
So the only 2 good cards that I pulled.
You have to pick one.
No. So the only two good cards I pulled on Friday on Saturday was Territorial Domain and Chase the Tail. So like, okay, I'm definitely going Zen, obviously. And so every game I was like, and this is something I learned from Clark actually. He was saying like, maybe like from Clark because he mentioned it after he learned it from some other, so if this is your idea, I'm not trying to take credit. Anyways, it was the notion of focusing on your 2 card combos, just like focusing on your best combination of cards and playing around those. So what I did every game was like, okay, I don't care who I'm playing. I'm just going to play like this value game, but I'm not going to use my leg piece until I see Territorial Domain.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not going to use my mask that puts a card from your graveyard onto the bottom unless I see Chase the Tail. That way, I can get max value for Territorial Domain and block for 6 on 1 card and get a Crouching Tiger. And then I'm going to get double value off to Chase the Tail and just play around that so that I have multiple explosive turns that either wipe Enigma's board or just blow people's backs out. And that way I win the game.
Sounds like you were playing like a good limited player.
I was.
Did it work for you?
Yeah, I went 3-0 that seal.
Let's go!
And yeah, I was just really surprised that it worked so well because I was like feeling really mid about my
The rest of your pool.
the rest of my pool. So I was like, you know what? I played Digimon today. I had a really good day. I'm okay if I lose all my rounds, and I just won all my rounds. So I was like, oh, sick. So that's just something that I'm gonna keep in mind for draft. I'm gonna focus on 2 card combos or like just really key pieces, play around those to the best of my ability, and hopefully gets me to day 2 of Nats again and maybe plays better than I did last year. So yeah, those are my 2 cards.
I also want to point out that a lot of Zens have been building lower on the Transcend, but if you pull like a really good combo bomb, like a Red Key Unleashed or this Chase the Tail, like really prioritize getting that headpiece. Really prioritize getting a Preserve Tradition, the Transcend card that lets you cycle a card back into your deck.
Yeah.
And then just tutor that every single time. Just the more times you can play your good card, the better your deck will be.
Yeah, that makes sense. Play the good card multiple times, win the game.
Yeah.
Call it a day. What do you got, Fuzzy?
All right, so my favorite card during pre-release, the card that made me feel the coolest and strongest, even in games that I didn't win, was Koi Blessed Kimono.
Yes.
So like going into spoiler season, right? We had all of these like cloaked cards revealed, and all the chess pieces were like, oh, when you only have 1 life, you get to flip this face up. And a lot of those seemed really underwhelming to me. This is cool because it lets you get a resource card, except when you're down to 1, which is pretty easy to manipulate. Like I really liked using the Koi Blessed Kimono with all of the sky equipments, the ones that
The K-Kois.
Yeah, the K-Kois. So if like they're swinging for just about lethal, you can make it like 1 less, and maybe that'll be enough to put you at that 1 marker. That you have that agency to use those other cards to finesse it, to land you in the sweet spot, the bullseye, so that you can flip this face up, get another card, but not just any card, probably the most powerful card in your deck. Like Inner Cheese, if you're playing on Zen, a Chi represents your most powerful card with a Crouching Tiger, right? The upside is just there. And I remember playing a game against Clark where he 20-0'd me. We played twice in pre-release.
God damn.
One time I won. The other game...
Okay, I want to point out that this was a really close 20-0.
That's what it felt like.
I only had like 5 cards left in my deck when the game was over.
Oh, so it's actually close.
It was
It
actually
was.
close. I mean, I never lost that
That
first
sounded like
spectrum.
such BM with no context.
I had more cards in my deck, so it was one of those things where like I just couldn't get through his defenses. So he got to keep these big ward auras up, and if I could just push a little bit more damage, he'd lose his auras, and then I could really pivot, and I could deal all 20 of the damage that he had on the board before I took another one of it, you know. And when I like went down to 1, I was like, okay, he has 20. I have 1, but by flipping this kimono, I just might be able to squeeze this entire game out of my ass. And I didn't, but I swear it felt close. It was like, here's my comeback time.
Oh, yeah.
The way that this card makes me feel capable of doing amazing feats.
Now, I think to be fair, I still hadn't played my Manifestations of Mirror Guy in that game, so like I had one last good card in my deck.
Yeah, but I didn't know that.
Yeah.
So this card felt like it could do miracles. And I got the same feeling in other like games that same pre-release, in other pre-releases where I ran this card, where like going to 1 to grab a cheat in my hand felt so not just powerful, but also fun. So that's why it's my shout out card today. It's probably my favorite common in the set.
Now sign it and give it to me.
Combining that point with Joel's point, like using that mask to get like your Chase the Tail or Key Unleashed, but also use that block to like make sure that you can go to 1 so that you can flip this, get the Chi, and then immediately go 2 to route that card.
You're cooking.
There's some really great combos here.
I'm really surprised at how much I like these like random stupid cloak pieces in limited. Just a lot of fun.
It's
Yeah.
been, I mean, the limited environment has been so much fun to play in. I cannot wait for a limited opinion episode. I am chock full of them.
1 for you and 1 for you.
Thank you, Fuzzy.
Why did I think this blocked for 3? This card sucks.
There's one that blocks for 3. That's the ninja one.
There's
that's what it is.
the ward for the 3 blade break and then the 2 battle worn.
This card's pretty good though. It's amazing what you can do when you have 1 extra card in hand.
Oh, I mean,
True.
just the guaranteed chi for like, I mean, even just it being a blue resource, right?
Yeah.
Like just being able to like get a free blue resource. I mean, we see how powerful that is on the legendary headpiece.
Yes.
This is just like the same thing, but you have to go to 1 to do
it's
it.
more steps, yeah. But I like it.
And it's playable
In limited though, like
Yeah.
like imagine your hand is like red 3 for 7 and just a bunch of other cards that you end up having to block with, but then you play this card and you're still able to throw 7 damage at them after blocking with 3 cards.
Give yourself maybe even like a 6-card hand in the late game. Yeah. It's big. You just got to find the right way to use it. Focus on that pitch stack, everybody.
And the chi represents like flexibility, so there's a lot of ways you can do it. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
I think that's all we have for you. We hope everyone had fun at their pre-releases and that everyone tunes into future episodes, that they tell their friends and loved ones that they are wonderful and that they go home with happiness in their hearts. I don't know why I decided to get so... I don't know.
Yeah, Sappy Clark is not something I expected to...
I don't know, man. I just started talking. I guess it's what's on the heart right now.
We're pretty close to 100 subscribers. We'll probably hit it before this episode is released.
Yeah, so if we're already at 100 subscribers, let's fucking go!
Until next time, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Pitch It To Me podcast is hosted by Fuzzy Delp, Clark Moore, and Joel Recinos. Executive producer, Talon Stradley. Music by Dillon Hulse. Logo by Han V. Sound mixing, Christopher Moore. And last but not least, you. Thank you for listening. Please give us a follow on your favorite social media platform at Pitch It To Me podcast. do another take?
For prosperity's sake.
Yep.
That's what you say, right?
Posterity, not prosperity.
Whatever. Fucking nerd.
You asked. I was gonna let it go, and you're like, "That's how you say it, right?"
I know.
And I'm like, "No."
That was fake outrage.